Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and also streaming on Expert CRA Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Brett Swarts, and every Friday I'm with really becoming my co-host on this podcast. He's Mr. Logan Freeman. He's known as Mr. Kansas City. He's a commercial real estate expert, broker, owner, and he is specializing in 1031 exchanges, especially for those people who are looking to relocate out of those highly priced California, New York places and looking for triple net and or value add multifamily or other commercial real estate assets. And so today we are talking about a big thing, and it's when to partner up and when to run away, when to run in the other direction. So Logan, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Doing fantastic, Brett. Thanks for having me again. Today, we're talking about a really interesting topic that is so much more applicable than just commercial real estate. But it's one thing that we get questions at a lot about is, hey, I'm trying to get started in commercial real estate. When do I partner up? How do I evaluate partners? I think applied, you can apply it to other industries, but you can also apply these ideas to vendors that you're working with, right? So, there's a lot of different kind of components to partnering up, and the way that I like to do it is what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to give some people some tangible, I think, advice. I've got a couple fun stories in here that I think people can relate to. But I've been coached on this quite extensively. But it does come naturally to me. If anybody meets me in person, my top talent is individualization. And all that means is I can understand what somebody else is needing in the moment. And then I'm not a chameleon by any means, but I'm self-aware enough and I have the relationship management expertise to say, man, that person needs to talk about this instead of just trying to move forward. So that has helped me in the sales world also, but very, very much more in my personal life too. But also in the business world, whenever I start to think about who the heck am I going to partner with? Because, frankly, everybody thinks that Logan Freeman's this big extrovert, and I'm not. I'm an ambivert. If I could pick, be by myself and holing up in this office here and reading one of these awesome books and just chilling by myself, I probably would. I don't get a lot of energy from being around other people. But I think you can hear a lot of the self-awareness that I'm focused on, but I'm excited to kind of talk through some tangible ways that people can evaluate partners and when to avoid. I'm going to give some scenarios on when to avoid partners and when to maybe think about partnering up.
So let's dive right in. So what is the first secret or the first step to making sure that you're partnering up with the right groups or the right person in the right way? And how and when to run in the other direction.
All right. Brett, did you know that the divorce rate for business partnerships is higher than the divorce rate for marriages?
I don't. And who even tracks that?
Yeah. So in the United States, while 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce, which is extremely sad, the divorce rate for business partners is much higher at 80%. And so that's really an interesting stat, and I'll find where I got that information, and we can link to that. But we've seen this over and over again in the business world. Poor business partnerships ending in disaster for both parties. What looks good on paper doesn't end up working in the real world. And here's a great example. In the 1980s movie starring a fellow A-listers Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman, they had a can't miss all written all over them. Everyone involved couldn't be more wrong. The team up resulted in Ishtar. Anybody know what Ishtar was? I didn't think so, because it was a stinker of a movie with some of the worst reviews of the 80s and even worse box office. So it was released in 1987. It was made for $55 million in 1987. It only made $14 million worldwide. So let me give you a little perspective. Top Gun, which came out a year before, was made on a budget of $15 million, but grossed $357 million worldwide. So the team up of Maverick and Goose worked out a lot better than Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman. So anyways, I just love to give people a little bit of context, tell a little bit story. I have another business story. If we have time, we'll get into it. It's between WordPerfect and Novell. It's a fun one to go into. as well. But some of the business partnerships that worked well, we've all heard. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak of Apple. We got Bill Gates and Paul Allen of Microsoft. You got Larry Page and Sergey Brin of Google. So the right partners can be key to the greater success, like in the case of Apple, or on the flip side, the grease on the slippery slope to failure, as we saw in Ishtar. So why do some partnerships work and some others don't? It turns out there's a common thread among successful partnerships. Successful partners recognize their limitations and respect what the others can bring to the table. So that's the first step. So I'll say it again. Successful partners recognize their limitations and they respect what the other person can bring to the table. So that brings us to, some golden rules of partnering. But I want to pause there and allow you to ask any questions or add anything that you see fit up to this point.
Yeah, let me just kind of summarize a little bit. And by the way, I grew up in the 80s, and I wanted to be Tom Cruise, and I wanted to be riding that motorcycle first. I wanted to be playing sand volleyball, right? And then I wanted to be flying the jets. And I would tell my mom and my grandma that one day I'm going to be flying them to Hawaii in my jet. And that's like my dream. I would draw jets. I would take pictures of jets. It was the Angels, we call it the something Angels, Blue Angels. We'd go to the Blue Angel shows. I mean, it was I felt like every 80s boy's dream, right? To be Tom Cruise. Anyways, but I love that. Maverick and Goose, they were opposites in a lot of ways, and they were great partners. So if I'm hearing this first point is recognizing the limitations that you have. So humility, right? And then second, respecting what the other person can bring to the table. Is that a fair summary so far?
That's exactly right. So golden rule number 1. Know what you're each bringing to the table. Can you stand to benefit from each other? Is what you're contributing valuable? Think through what the other person brings to the table. Will the combination of your knowledge and assets result in something greater than the sum of the parts, or worse? I mean, so like you can ask yourself, can you leverage this combined skill set, knowledge, expertise, and capital for the mutual benefit of both parties? I was watching with my wife last night. We didn't get through the whole thing, but Netflix put out a documentary. I think CNN actually did it. It was talk about how we've all fallen into these personality tests and started to type ourselves. We use a lot of these different personality tests when thinking about partners and vendors, but we don't let that be the end all be all. It's kind of a starting point. And so we're high on the Culture Index, Strength Finders, the Enneagram. You've got Myers-Briggs, obviously, as the top one. But we're always looking at these things so we can see, tangibly, what is the skill set, the knowledge and expertise. And we don't allow it to guide the decision directly in relation to hey, that's not a good person to work with. It's just that person might not be the right person for this position, and they might not even know it. Self-awareness is so hard to come by, and it takes a lot of time to get there. So that's the golden rule number 1. I've got some other ones I want to copy or go to as well, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on personality tests or culture assessments. Have you used those in the past, Brett? You're a leader, and I want to hear how you're implementing that.
Absolutely crucial, right? Emotional intelligence, right? And the first time I learned about this is a book called Personality Plus, and it breaks down, the driver personality, right? The analytical personality, the expressive, and the amiable, right? And as you start to look at this and understand, and the key word is here, respect. There's no right or wrong personality type. Every personality type has its strengths, and the key is understanding who you are, right? And those gifts that you were given. And I actually I don't think I've coined it, but I've picked up on it and someone said it, but I don't know who to give credit to, but I call it the fulfillment formula. And it's identifying your unique gift, like your unique strength, like what is it about you that you were given, times maximizing the potential of that gift or that strength, times the number of people that you can impact, times trusting in God that He has a bigger purpose for you. Or if you don't know God or trust in God, then trusting that there's a bigger purpose for what you're doing in life. That equals fulfillment, right? It's understanding those things, and that starts with understanding yourself, right? Myself, I'm a driver expressive. That's always, and I'm an extrovert, right? And so I do get energy from other people, and I love doing, drivers. If you're a driver personality, life is not worth living unless you are doing. If you are an analytical personality, life is not worth living unless you are thinking. if you're an expressive personality, life is not worth living unless you are talking, right? And if you're an amiable personality, life is not worth living unless you're relaxing, okay? And so as soon as I understood that, by the way, my marriage got better, right? Because my wife are polar opposites, right?
Absolutely.
She's an introvert. She's amiable, right? I'm the extrovert. I'm a driver expressive, right? So now, does that not mean that sometimes we're in different parts of those personality types? Sure. But you typically have your one dominant and then your second one. So understanding your first who you are is very important. And then likewise, perhaps you'll lead into the next part, your partner, who they might be and how that might complement. Is that a fair summary? What do you think, Logan?
Absolutely, man. I love to hear, all of the ways that you have implemented this. Everybody finds self-awareness and emotional intelligence a little bit differently. For me, it was through the guys over at Strength Finders who created Emotional Intelligence 2.0. David Goleman and Travis Bradbury. Those were kind of two guys that I studied. And Emotional Intelligence 2.0 changed my life for the better. And so I love to hear that you've implemented Personality Plus was the book, right?
Correct.
Personality Plus. I'm going to definitely.
I think it's by Florence Littauer, I think is what it is. Florence Littauer, Personality Plus. It's actually a pretty quick read, and it's a great read.
All right, let's go through a few more of the golden rules. So you want to avoid partners for short-term needs. Partnerships with short-term windows lack the commitment to success. You want to avoid partners with no special skill sets. Just because you like someone does not mean they're the right partner for you. So whose roles or functions can be hired out or outsourced? So why would you give up equity just when you can outsource something? So that's the second one. So avoid partners with no special skill sets. Think through the mental model from the Japanese called Ikigai, which is the way that you find your unique genius. There's a lot of resources that you can tap into. The third one's a little less quantitative. It's a little more qualitative, but you want to avoid partners when you're desperate. Just like the worst time to get involved in another relationship is right after a breakup when you're desperate, avoid business partnerships when you're desperate. The cloudy judgment makes for business disasters. You want to avoid partners for just security and emotional support for the journey. Again, just because you like somebody doesn't mean they're the right partner. And lastly, you want to avoid partners with those who you think it'll be fun. Avoid making business decisions based on emotions. Base those partnering decisions based on metrics, numbers, and economic fundamentals. And I can't say that one enough. I think that it's really difficult sometimes for people to grasp this model. But if the model is based on, hey, we're going to be business partners first and friends second, I have had a lot more success partnering that way than I'm saying, hey, I like this person. It's my friend. I've known him for 10 years and making them into a business partner. So those are all of the other golden rules on when to avoid partners, Brett. And I can repeat them if you'd like, but want to pause there.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like you could write 2 or 3 books on that. Some of the ones that really stick out, right? I mean, they all kind of do, but avoid partners with short-term needs, right? I think you're right. Sometimes we get caught so close into the trees or to the one tree versus the forest, right? And we have this big need or this big short-term thing. And either we're not hiring a coach, we're not outsourcing, we're not getting support to help us break through that, either that false belief or that challenge that we're facing. And now we're thinking it's got to be someone else to give up equity, right? Or give up something, right? And so avoid the short-term needs. I think that's spot on. And then of course, avoid partners with no special skill set, right? If they're not bringing something that's really, I would say that's taking a while to get there, or something that's going to take, maybe a decade, or I call it the 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yep.
Have you spent 10,000 hours? And if I'm going to be bringing someone as a partner, am I going to need to spend 10,000 hours to get them here, or can they join me now? And now we can really explode this thing together. Those 2 ones definitely stick out. And I love the way you put the divorce part or the marriage part, right? You wouldn't want to jump into a new relationship, especially if you're feeling desperate.
Absolutely. Vet potential partnerships. Test runs in the business world are not unusual. Potential partners start with something small to see how the 2 sides are going to interact. And if that test run works out, longer term projects are then undertaken. Don't jump into something, that you can't get out of.
So let's walk through maybe an example of that, right? So let's give it something tactical. So maybe you've done that, or maybe you've seen people do that. What would be like a short test run potential, like a 30, 60, 90 day, hey, we're just going on a date here. We don't know if we want to get married. In fact, we're going to do just a little project together. How would you go about communicating that and setting those expectations there, Logan?
Well, just think about this. So we're eclipsing 1,000 units that we own as partners now. Okay, we got started with a 37 unit apartment complex, and I know that might seem large to some folks, but in the scale that we're at, that's a small to mid-size apartment complex. And so we said, look, before we set out and create what is now FTW, let's see how everybody operates and performs during actually this first project together. And so really we got started with basically a 60-day trial period, because before, when you think about a commercial real estate transaction, it's usually 60 to 90 days. Sometimes they're shorter, but we said, hey, look, we've got 60 days to make this happen together. And here's your role. Here's your responsibility. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. We laid it out very clear in a simple Word document. We said, let's go execute. And so we took a test run at getting this deal under contract, going through the due diligence, raising the capital, placing the financing, all of those things. So I had 60 days to say, nah, this isn't going to work, or hey, I've seen these guys be put through the fire and I know how they're going to react. Let's go ahead and move forward. And so really, I had been courting these partners for 4 or 5 months before we even got to the point of that 60-day trial period, right? So it was, hey, let's meet weekly for 4 or 5 months. So we found a deal. Then we had 60 days to test that out. That went well. We did another project, a little bit larger project, and we just continued to step it up. So that's I think a pretty prime example in my own, business partnership, kind of experience that we've utilized that same framework.
Yeah, I'm thinking like boot camp versus battle, right? My wife and I are watching what's that one? It's a documentary movie show. Hold on, it's going to come to me. It's World War II, a Band of Brothers. Okay, there it is. Okay, so in the very beginning, the first season, they're in like boot camp, right? And they're all just getting to know each other. They're doing the obstacles. They're doing the marches. They're doing the hikes, right? And before they even go to battle. So I think if I'm hearing you right, you're saying, hey, go through this boot camp, whether that be underwriting a property, getting into contract, getting everything going, to see how you're going to be meshing together under this due diligence period, right? Do the deal. And by the way, you might still do the deal from that 37 unit, but then you got to probably assess to see, okay, now I'm in the battle on this 37 unit. Do I want to go to battle on this 100 unit? Is that a fair summary, Logan?
That's 100% right. We never did, a 50 plus unit project until we started to really understand each other's skill sets, see everybody put through a really big challenge, how they react, how their emotional intelligence was through the process, and how we worked best together. And so, people are always asking us, how did you guys come together? How did this partnership, get to be where it is? And I said, well, we took it slow. We became business partners first, friends second. We put it through the test, a small test. We started to operate that deal. Then we decided to go make the big push and, basically put all of our efforts together. Yep.
So I want to focus on that business partner first versus friends, because I think that's probably one of the biggest pitfalls that we don't want to fall into, but we kind of naturally do, right? We're friends first and then business partners. But it doesn't mean we're saying, and I don't think you're saying this, don't be business partners with your friends. You're just saying when you're starting that new business venture, that new thing, you've got to take the friends glasses off and you got to put the business glasses on, and you've got to set the expectations. So walk us through maybe some tips or some thoughts or some that you've been able to set those expectations properly.
Yeah. So, a quick list of when I can feel it's good to partner is when you know the weaknesses and your strengths personally, but also your potential partner's weaknesses and strengths. So, and frankly, when you have a bunch of 1%ers, hard charging men or women together, it can be gas and fire. It can be, like gasoline and fire, or it can be, like ice and heat. You got to be careful with that. So they have to complement. You don't need 3 of the same person with the same skill set. So that's the first one. The second one is, when do you want to scale? Well, the team up result in efficiencies ideal for scaling, or teaming up actually going to slow you down. And then the third is, when you know the sacrifices that you and your new partners are willing to make. Both parties have to have skin in the game, and that ensures that each side is playing and staying in the game. So you have to have that documented role. I think a lot of people say, hey, you need to make sure you have a legal agreement. Sure. But I can't tell you how many times I have signed a legal agreement one time and never reviewed it. It has to be a part of your culture. It can't just be your operating agreement, your legal document. You have to review this on a regular basis. We're sitting down monthly, quarterly, evaluating our EOS, which is our entrepreneur operating system. We're doing all of these things on a regular basis. How are you feeling in this right now? What are you struggling with? All of these things. So it can't just be documented and then you file it away and forget about it. You have to use that. Let it guide your decisions that you're making. And then, once you have that documented, you have to document the exit as well. In case one person or two people of the partnership decide to leave or doesn't fulfill their obligation, you have to have that documented. Not only, have it in writing, but also talk through what scenarios would look like if that was to happen. We always call it kind of the hit by the truck, scenario. Logan, if you get hit by a truck, can the other guys pick it up? I mean, you guys are managing a ton of investors' capital now. So like if something happens to you, what's the contingency plan? So you got to know those weaknesses, know when you want to scale, know your sacrifices, document it, and then implement it on a regular basis.
Fantastic, Logan. We're running out of time here, and there's so much value there. For listeners who want to get in touch with you and learn more about Mr. Kansas City commercial real estate brokerage and opportunities, what's the best place for them to find you?
Well, I'm super active on LinkedIn, so everybody can follow me, Logan Freeman on LinkedIn. Our website is ftwinvestmentsllc.com. Plenty of ways to reach out to me there. We've got buttons all over that website to click and get a hold of us, Brett.
Well, thank you, Logan. I want to thank you for being on the show, and that's ftwinvestmentsllc.com. And yeah, of course, find them on LinkedIn. And just so you know, we're streaming live from Capital Gains Tax Solutions headquarters here in Northern California, and on YouTube, Capital Gains Tax Solutions, as well as Expert CRE Secrets. That being said, Logan, any final thoughts for everyone to encourage them to make sure they are getting in the right partnerships and not the wrong ones?
I do have one last thing. I was talking with a gentleman yesterday. He said, hey, how can I do the same thing you've done? I said, you have to find your partners in the field. You cannot always find people online. And most doers, most practitioners, most operators, most one percenters are out there doing it. And you are going to have to convince them to partner with you, not the other way around. So when you're entering into a partnership, look for people in the field. You're not always going to find them, in the meetup groups. You're going to have to find them in your market, in your industry. Find somebody who's already doing it and operating it. Figure out where your value is, value to them in a clear, concise, and compelling way, and then make that case and stay diligent. That's what I want to leave people with.
Beautiful. Well, that's a great way to wrap up the show. If you want to learn more about Logan, again, check him out on his website or on LinkedIn, and that is ftwinvestmentsllc.com. And if you want to learn more about Capital Gains Tax Solutions, you go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We specialize in the deferred sales trust, giving people an alternative or a backup plan to a failed 1031 exchange. So that's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Hey, see us here every Friday, 8:30 a.m., and we appreciate everyone listening to today's